Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
What's up, what's down, what is going on around? I'm Paolo Lising, founder of Startup in Taiwan. This show is to answer your questions about living in Taiwan, either for business, school, or just hanging out. So leave your questions below. Our guest for today is Joshua Dent from the US. Josh holds an MBA in marketing. Wow, he has spent 10 years in Taiwan. And throughout the course of that decade, he has a lot of experiences here in Taiwan. He has actually lived with the Aboriginal village in Taitung. He has climbed 20 of Taiwan's top 100 peaks. That means around 3,000 meters plus in elevation. He has actually worked in Taiwan, but he has been doing his own thing as an entrepreneur, as many of us foreigners are doing here, and as an independent author. He is giving us a preview of what his book is all about, With Hope and Help. But before we talk about that book, let's welcome Josh. Josh, welcome to our show.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here to talk to your listeners.
Yeah, this will be the first time in quite a long time that I will be having a guest here on our show. But before we talk about your book, let's talk about your experiences in Taiwan first. How did you get in Taiwan? Why Taiwan in the first place?
Actually, it's a great story. I was about 34 years old, and I was working this job in a call center, and I had gone for a big promotion. And one day my boss called me in the office and he said, "Hey man, can you log out of your phone? I want to talk to you about that promotion." And when we went in the office, he goes, I'm really sorry, but I hate to tell you, but you didn't get the promotion." And so I go, "Okay, right, no big deal." Then he goes, "Well, what I'd like to know is what's next." And I wasn't thinking much of it. I'm like, I'm going to go to lunch after this, you know? And then he goes, no. He's like, "What's next for Joshua Dent?" He's like, "I know you, man. I just think this place isn't good enough for you. I think you have bigger ambitions than to be here. Like, even if you do get a promotion, you go up a little bit of money, and I don't think it's to be enough for you." And he just like, I never forget, like he like looked over his shoulder as he kept talking just to make sure like his boss wasn't listening. He's like, "What do you want to do?" And then that's when I told him, I was like, "I'll be honest, for like the last 5 years, I had heard about teaching English in Taiwan, and I had that on my mind, and I just never had the courage just to pull the string." And then he goes, "Well, what do you make it happen?" Simple, just and make sure I bought my ticket to go. And a month later, he's like, "Hey, did you buy that ticket?" Or, sure enough, I had bought it. So that's
Wow.
that's how I ended up here. And I used to go online and just look up jobs about teaching English. And Taiwan always came up as like most of Korea, more money, but Taiwan just seemed to have a better quality of life, like more laid back culture, less stringent kind of working culture as far as versus Korea. So
Well, could you tell us more about your life as an educator here in Taiwan? How was it?
I love it. I've been working in the public school for the last 8 years now. So, for example, now I work in this program in Yunlin County, and they send us to 3 different small schools every single week. And the reason they send us there is because these schools can't afford a foreign teacher. And so we have real small class sizes. So typically, my average class is only about 8 or 10 students. And what I really love about it is they give you a lot of freedom to teach however you want. Like most of the time, I'm just rolling in there, playing some dodgeball, playing Uno, playing different kinds of games like that. It's more just to try to inspire them to hopefully at some day become a little more serious about actually sitting down and studying English. So I don't have it's very stress-free and a lot of fun actually.
Plus, a lot of the learnings that you get is actually with these like fun things that you do with the students. Speaking to them, using English as a mode of communication or as a mode of teaching, then that's actually a lot of learning than when you force students to actually learn English like like by reading, like forcing them to read or write, as opposed to doing fun things with them and incorporating the lessons in those activities.
I was just gonna add to that real quick.
Sure,
Like
yes,
the other day, we just did this little fun little experiment for the grade 1, 2, and 3 students. You just put a bean seed in a plastic bag, and then you tape it to the window. Then you put a little bit of water in there, and then it'll sprout up. And like before we went outside to tape it to the window, I just said, all right, let's say a prayer. And we're like, they're all like on the floor going, sun, we need sun. And like going back to your point, like you'll remember that more. Like the co-teacher and such, she's like, I don't think they'll ever forget the word sun for the rest of their life.
I agree to that. Taiwan is trying to be an English speaking country, and this is part of the 2030 plan. Could I get your opinion about the chances that Taiwan could actually make this goal?
My honest opinion is you have to set your goal high. I understand that, but 2030 just seems to be a little bit too soon. Like maybe even like 2040 or 2045. It's just, to me, they have like generation after generation has just had it pounded in their head that English is just absolutely impossible. It's so difficult. And to break out of that mindset in less than, I think they implemented that policy. And if I remember, around 2017 or 2018, they gave themselves 13 years to do it. My honest opinion is they're behind, and it could happen, but I just don't know how. I just don't know how, to be blatantly honest with you.
Okay. I assume that by now you're holding an APRC. Am I correct? Having lived here for a decade, that must be the case.
I should, but I got to about the 4.5 year mark, and before I had this thing where like I really wanted to go and hike the Appalachian. And before I left, all my friends that had an APRC, they're like, come on, man, just stick it out for 6 more months, get your APRC. And I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna come back. I want to always like call back. So yeah, I will be getting my APRC in November of this year.
All right, so it's closer. I think. Well, my question is invalid then, because I was about to ask, how does it feel to have an APRC recently compared to having an ARC? But so let me rephrase the question then. What are you looking forward to having an APRC?
The APRC isn't a huge advantage for me. Like there's only a few opportunities that I could have that I don't already have because I teach in the public school anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot of teachers, they like getting the APRC because once they have the APRC, they can transition out of Bushy Bond. But like for example, I could write for the Taipei Times. Like I know in the past I've talked to the editor at the Taipei Times about maybe doing some travel articles, and he's like, "Nah, you can't do it, the APRC." But yeah, in there would be more opportunity. Like maybe it would be a little bit easier if, now that I have written one book and I've got another one underway, I could go and do more speaking opportunities at schools. That's probably the biggest thing that I would be looking forward to.
We will get to that book shortly, but one last question before that. As a foreigner, is there anything that the government can do to make foreigners' lives better?
Yeah, one thing that doesn't seem to be talked about a lot is the fact that the foreigners will be taxed at 18% for the first, what is it? It's the first 6 months of the year before you have your APRC.
Yes.
I don't. To me, I just look at it as a savings account. But I know over the years, like we've lost. I mean, we've even lost teachers because they just get so frustrated about the fact that they have to pay such a higher tax rate. If that could be somehow, they don't even have to change the law, but just make it more clear. I think that would be one thing that's not talked about often, but could be helpful. Besides the banks, everybody goes for the bank.
Okay, so the clearer tax policy so that foreigners will have better expectations. Also useful when they negotiate for their jobs at schools. Is this correct?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, let's talk about your book now. I've read a little bit about the synopsis, but please tell us more about what your book is all about. The title is With Hope and Help.
Yeah, exactly. The first half of the book is there's a lot of conversations. It's about a firefighter from September 11th, and he's raising his girlfriend's son, and the mom and the firefighter are having a lot of conversations with the son, encouraging him no matter what, he's got to go out and help other people. That's the one constant theme throughout the first half of the book. Um, and the book's a little bit funny, it's a little bit sad, and then in the second half of the book, it turns to keep hope, still being able to keep hope alive during difficult situations. So it's kind of interesting, like especially from an entrepreneurial perspective, because like for example, I think you said you're running, you've gone through some what were seemingly hopeless situations, and maybe you didn't have enough money to pay your employees. I'm not saying that happened to you, but like it's possible, right? And then you're like, oh my god, what am I going to do? How do I still stay hopeful? And it's kind of interesting because the kids in the story, they go at things from more of a child's mindset, and I think adults could still learn a lot from it too.
I think the interesting part is, for me, to be honest, I also wanted to write something similar, but I don't know how to begin. So may I ask what your thought processes are? What's your inspiration behind this book? Why did you come up with this book?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So my original inspiration for this book was I used to listen to this podcast every morning. It was called 20 for 20, and they put it out during the 20th anniversary, and it was told by a firefighter, and he collected 20 stories from different firefighters that he knew personally on that day, and the different heroic actions that they took. And when I was listening to that podcast every day when I was walking my dog, I'm just bawling my eyes out. I mean, the stories are just incredible. And so I had been working on these fiction stories for a long time, and it's just a matter of just sitting down every single day. Like, I think the biggest thing is just trusting yourself. That when you first start writing it, just write whatever comes to your mind, and worry about the rest later. And then also a part of that was I started working with one of the members of the Thai community, Pierre Mo. I guess this is Pierre. I hired him as a productivity coach because I finished this book, at least one book for so long, and he helped out a lot, like having that productivity coach, because he could kind of pick out my blind spots of things that I was doing that were not allowing me to finally finish this kind of project.
Yeah, I guess you bring up one good point about, like sharing your journey with the community, and the TIE is really a good place for you to actually, share your journey and probably get some feedback about it. May I ask about the timeline? Like, how long does it take for you to come up with the book?
This one took me 7 months. So I started working on it in May, June, and July. And it started out just kind of like a just little short story. I had started this Facebook page, and I was posting a prompt on there every single day. And the idea was, like, the rest of the people in the group, you don't have to write the perfect draft, but you go on, you look, you go, okay, time yourself, write for 10 or 15 minutes, just write whatever you can, just get it out there so you have something to work with. So it started out as a short story. Then I started to like it a little bit more. I gave it to a few friends to look over. They're like, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So then it grew to like 40 or 50 pages. And then I went home for the summer. I put it aside. And when I came back, I had heard from a friend of mine about Pierre. And I called him like when I came back. I was like, hey, I want to start working with you. He's like, what do you want to do? It just kind of came out as just like, I want to write a book. Like like when I got on the phone, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but like when he asked me that question, I didn't want to be like, oh, I don't know. Like I was like, no, I want to write a book. I want to finish by the end of the year. There's a lot of other steps in that process. I hired an editor from Fiverr.
Okay.
Um, she came with all 5-star reviews. She did a great job. I got what's called a developmental edit. So that's when they just take a look at the story and say, oh, this character's good. Maybe you can improve this one. You can improve this part of the plot, that kind of thing. And then I got into like the 4th and 5th draft. And then one day I was talking. I was like, okay, I gotta set a deadline for myself, and the deadline has to have consequences. I contacted the guy that owns the bar in the city that I work here. He's a South African guy. I was like, hey, can I set up a book signing event? I just picked a date kind of out of the sky. It's like, I think it was January 18th. I'm like, I want to have a book signing event on January 18th. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll support that. And then I was talking to another friend of mine. I'm like, what do I need? What should I do if I don't finish this book? Because it's easy just to cancel the book signing. It's no big deal, right? And she's like, I got it. How about I kick you in the nuts if if you don't finish it? I was like, done. There was no way at that point that I was not going to finish the book.
What's interesting in the process is that this is a fictional book. Is there part of reality that you actually pulled into the actual story of this firefighter?
Yeah, totally, 100%. Like when my mom read it, she was laughing because like one of the restaurants that I said that the kids went to was called the Spot Drive-In, and she's like, I know the Spot. That's where we used to go for ice cream when we were a kid, And like even the relationship between the 3 kids in the story, it was very similar to the relationship between myself and my best friend when I was a kid, and one of the other neighbors, and some of the stuff like that. Yeah, it's just like a hodgepodge of all your life experiences, and you either kind of embellish some of it, or you just kind of twist and turn a lot of stuff that you've already experienced yourself. Like, for example, a lot of the story is about the kids during their baseball season, and that was like my favorite sport when I was a kid. So I was very comfortable writing about baseball and the things that will happen throughout the season, like especially in we call it little league baseball, but yeah. So yeah, it's a ton of stuff from my own life, and then just kind of fictionalized.
The theme of the book is all about having hope amidst trial. If you have to pick, what do you have to hope for, or what could extend your hope, what would that be?
For me personally,
Yeah.
and just having community is number 1, and I'd say number 2 would be just having a very specific goal to get to. That's when you feel more hopeful. Like when I was writing the book, like once I had that date, like January 18th, it's like, yes, now I feel hopeful that I can actually finish this.
Well, I guess that's a good way to end this conversation. I know that your book is available on Amazon. I've seen it. How could people here in Taiwan, or probably abroad, could get a hold of a paper copy of your book?
Amazon, number 1, and number 2, if you're here in Taiwan, just drop me a message, or drop something in the comments there, and I'll arrange it so that I can mail it to you directly.
And I know that this is not your first book. You're coming up with a second book, but you could also tell us about it.
Yeah, the second one is actually, it's going to be a satire about an English teacher living in Taiwan, and he is faced with the dilemma of it's really blown out of proportion, but he's faced with the dilemma that he feels like he needs to tell the truth at all times, and then he comes to Taiwan where kindness is kind of more important. It's more like, how you say 3 words in Chinese and somebody will say, oh, your Chinese is fantastic, so that throws him off. So, but that will be available my goal for that one is July the 1st.
Wow, we'll look forward to that. But for now, I'm encouraging everyone to look for a Josh book, With Hope and Help. That's it for our episode today. Thank you for joining us, Josh. And for our audience, we hope you liked the episode for today. Don't worry, we're gonna get you more as you requested me to do so. So until next time, goodbye.
Great, thank you so much.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.